What's up guys, it's Noah here with CustomRCMods. Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I'm back with part 2 of my freestyle drone build series. As you can see, we're here after the build has been completed, but that's what we're going to be talking about in this video, the actual process altogether. Now, I can just go ahead and spoil it, saying that the build process was overall very smooth, and I'm very happy with this result altogether. It's very clean, and I thought that it went together very easily. This is going to be a great build if you guys are just building your first FPV quad and looking to get into the hobby. However, although I was planning to do a full in-depth build tutorial, I decided to go ahead and just time-lapse it because overall it's fairly straightforward, and I'm going to go ahead and point you to the right direction in terms of an actual build tutorial for a similar quad on like Joshua Bardwell's channel. I just think it'd be doing a disservice to you if I, in my inexperience in building, Joshua Bardwell's obviously a professional. I just want him to give you that information. It'll be more robust and easier explained. I guess I'm just not all that experienced. Mad props to him. He puts a lot of time into those build videos, and after filming like 15 minutes of full tutorial, I just realized, hey, you'd be probably better off with one of his. So check that out. Top link in the description below as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and play the time-lapse video while I go ahead and voice over everything that was going through my mind as I was connecting it all up, and we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it. So without further ado, here we go. Alright, so the first thing we're going to focus on here in the build is the frame. It's obviously the platform that all the components mount to, so it really just makes sense we get that out of the way first. And this frame was super easy to assemble, so props to iFlight for that. They included this nice reference sheet that I could go ahead and match my screw lengths and standoff sizes all together, of course, with just all the pieces, and see how it goes together. So with that, I went ahead and weighed it. The dry weight is around 130 grams or so, if I remember correctly. So now for mounting my motors, as you can see right in the center of your screen, I got that blue Loctite, which is crucial to make sure your motor screws don't back out. Always a smart idea there as well. And now I'm actually going ahead and mounting the motor wires down there with some heat shrink tubing on the arms. That's obviously just going to go ahead and protect the motor wires a little more thoroughly, and of course looks nice as well, so I like to do that on all of my builds. I actually snake the motor wires out and around the sides, so it's a lot cleaner under the ESC. And speaking of the ESC, now that's coming into the game here with the capacitor and the main battery lead being soldered on at this time. Alright, so once I got that completed, now I'm just going ahead and fluxing and tinning the motor pads there so I can go ahead and get these motor wires soldered up. It's a pretty straightforward process, but of course it's crucial to get these nice and strong on there, so I had to take a second look at some of these just to make sure that they wouldn't come off mid-flight and cause the quad to crash, because that just really would not be good, obviously. Alright, so once that was completed, I could go ahead and start assembling the different components of the quad. So at this point in the build, I like to go ahead and mount my flight controller, of course, but then I just want to make sure I get all my wire lengths and organization right. That's the one thing about these builds, is that it requires a little bit of forethought just to make sure you know where your receiver is going to go, where the video transmitter is going to go, how your antennas are going to mount, and things like that. Just kind of get those wire lengths just right. So before I even solder, you can see I'm actually adding every single component. I'm not actually just going one at a time here, but you'll see a bunch of wires start hanging out of the build, and then I'll attach them to the flight controller as we go along. Alright, so as you can see, actually the rotors of my other drone are coming into reference. I'm using it just as a little guide. It has a very similar flight controller there. But this is coming to the end of the build, just finishing up the last few joints on the flight controller. Then we're going to go ahead and slap the top deck on, and we are done with this thing. Overall, it took me about 2 hours total, and I was pretty happy with the end result, as you guys will hear here in a few seconds. Alright, so that's the build. I hope you enjoyed watching that time lapse, but now we're going to go ahead and get my initial impressions on this build as a whole and some of the components now that I have it in my hands. First things first, this frame I'm actually really happy with. It feels very well constructed. Altogether, the edges are nice and chamfered, as well as it just feels very solid and well built. I don't know if you could tell in the time lapse there, but my bottom plate actually had these weird wrinkles in it. I'll show a picture right here. It was a very interesting issue with the frame. I didn't think that it would be too structural or too big of an issue in the long run. However, I am going to go ahead and email Race Day Quads about it and see if they can point me out to what might be causing it, just so it doesn't happen for future batches and go unnoticed. But overall, it's a very good frame, has plenty of room in there for cargo. It's also very, very easy to build as well. So I'm really happy with this altogether, and I think that it's going to be a great basher frame for this quad, which is really good, of course, if you're just starting out. Now, these motors actually really surprised me. Now, my benchmark of amazing motors has always been the FPV Cycle Glide build that I have here, which has the Cyberzing 2306.5, 2555 kV motors, and these motors are quite similar. Now, obviously, they're not the same, but the $10 difference in here is actually quite alarming because these motors feel very, very smooth. I obviously haven't extensively tested them in the area. They feel smooth. They idle very quietly. I don't think they're going to be quite as good as these motors in terms of durability. These have a large 10mm bearing in them, which makes them super durable, and I guess would be a lot of the reason that people would buy those Cyberzings. However, these T-Motor Valix 2306.5, 2550 kV motors are really awesome. They look amazing, and the performance, I mean, at least at this point, looks to be really great as well. So yeah, for the flight stack, I really love how Diatone actually lays everything out and makes it super easy for you to go ahead and solder everything up. They also have a nice little card that comes with each one of their flight controller stacks that doesn't only just say the pinout of the flight controller, it doesn't even have just the wiring diagram. It also tells you where you should mount your receiver, your video transmitter. You should solder all that stuff to the actual flight controller. It kind of has a build plan laid out there for you, so you're not wondering, hey, should I solder my receiver here, or where's the inverted S-bus pad, things like that. I really commend Diatone for going the extra mile on that as well. They also go ahead and separate the different areas all around the board. So there's a little VTX area where not only do you have your video in and your 9V and your ground, but you also have the TX3, I think it was, UART on there, so you can go ahead and hook up your smart audio without having to run a wire all the way across the board. So moving on to the ESC, it looks really good as well. I like how they have a nice big heatsink on there, just so that it can obviously keep it cool, especially when you're running super power hungry motors and a very high current prop setup too on there as well. So for my video system here, more praise for this frame. I think that the video components fit in there really, really well. Now, you can see right here, the Race Day Quads Mach 3s actually recessed below the flight controller and ESC stack, which is nice, so now the power leads can actually run out the back very easily, and it still does get very good airflow, and I'm really happy just with it all together. There isn't quite enough space for this thing to fit straight. You can see that the MMCX is slightly at an angle. I kind of had to twist it, but it all fits on there perfectly, so no real complaints. I also really like how the camera mounting is taken care of on this frame. They actually have a little TPU insert for soft mounting in a sense that allows the micro cam size to go ahead and fit in here flawlessly, and you can take that out if you want to mount a mini size camera there as well. I also have my receiver mounted below in the front of the flight controller there as well, and on top of that is the Maytag buzzer, and the buzzer is really, really loud, which I guess is good, but I mean, I was really surprised when I first plugged it in. It was almost like deafeningly loud. So I don't know, I mean, it's personal preference. I would like it a little bit quieter, but I guess if you're stuck in the top of a 100-foot tree, that loudness can really come to play. So either way, pros and cons all around. I went ahead and printed off a TPU mount that I got off Thingiverse. That'll be in the link in the description below if you have a 3D printer and you want to go ahead and print this off as well. It is pretty simple and straightforward. I am going to be releasing a video here in the very near future talking all about my 3D printer settings for my Ender 3 V2. So yeah, GoPro Session 5 in there as always, and that pretty much wraps it up. I am running those GemFan props right here all together. I think they're just going to be a good option for this, and then if not, I'll go ahead and try the HQs, and then we'll see which one's better and order more propellers out of that. So that pretty much wraps this video up, guys. My next video is actually going to be a flight video. If you guys want to see how this thing gets tuned, I have a video link in the description below to my Betaflight 4.2 tuning guide, and I thought that I would just redo do this all together. However, I already made that video like a week ago, so you can go ahead and check that out. That'll be considered like part 3 of this series in a sense, and it'll take you right from just having a stock flight controller all the way to the point where you're testing the motors and getting ready for flight. So hopefully that'll help you get your thing tuned in beta flight. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.